peace. You are joy. And as you commit yourself to fully be who you are in every moment, every day, you are the light of this community. You are the light of the world. And for this knowing, we are grateful. For this knowing, we are oh so thankful. And so it is. And so we simply let it be. Amen. Good morning, Unity of Payson. Wake up. I'm here. When I was driving up, I was just sort of refreshing myself on the directions, right? It's so complicated getting here, right?
Oh, right.
But I happen to be one of those people who is, who believes himself to be, let me put it that way, Unity speak, who believes himself to be directionally challenged. So I just sort of, I got a sister over there. And so I looked at some directions that I had printed out some time ago, and I noticed that the directions were printed out in 2012. So I've been coming here, enjoying this community for almost 3 years. I think a little longer. So I feel right at home here, so what a joy it is to be here. And so I want to begin this morning by speaking to the obvious. And that is, let's face it, there are some things that are so important, so needed, so key to the success of our day that we wouldn't dream of leaving home without them. So ladies, I ask you to raise your hand if you wouldn't dream of leaving home without your purse. Yeah, I see a lot of hands going up. Men, raise your hands if you wouldn't dream of leaving home without your wallets. That's some important stuff in there. And who among us would dream of leaving home without combing our hair or brushing our teeth or having some general destination in mind? We just don't go out wandering the street. I'm going, I don't know where, but I'm going. So the question this morning is this. Is prayer one of those things for you? You can raise your hand if it is. Don't be embarrassed if it isn't. I see a few hands going up. Because you know. You know, and I believe we all know, that prayer is so important, so needed, so key to the success of our day that none of us should leave home without it. And so this morning I want to share a true story with you. It is the true story of one day in the life of one man that began without prayer. The story first appeared in the Provo, Utah Daily News. And the story goes that Brian Heiss was a man who really treasured his prayer time. He wouldn't dream of leaving home without first having had his morning prayer time. And then one morning, he woke up to discover that his apartment was flooded because of the burst pipes overhead. So he jumped out of bed, he grabbed the phone, he called the landlord, and he told his landlord what was going on and what the landlord should do about it. And the landlord said, Brian, don't worry. I'll fix the pipes. You go out and rent a wet vac. Well, Brian wasn't happy about that. He said, well, why do I have to go out and rent? But he got it. He changed clothes. He headed out of his apartment. He headed down the stairs out to the parking lot to get to his car, only to discover that his car had a flat tire. My friends, Brian was having a bad day. deep breath, rolled up his sleeves, changed the tire, got a little messy in the process. So he headed back to his apartment. He ran up the stairs. He flung open the door. He charged across the carpet and promptly slipped and bumped his head. Brian Hines, ladies and gentlemen, was having a very bad day. So he laid there a while and kind of got himself together. He got up, slowly moved to his bedroom, got himself cleaned up. He rushed out, but carefully rushed out of his apartment, headed down the stairs, headed towards the place where his car was, only to discover that his car was stolen. Now, was he having a bad day or what? But like with most stories, there is good news. And the good news is that he had so little gas in his car. That's right. The thieves did not get very far. So he was able to find his car just a few blocks from his apartment. The good news is that those burst pipes were promptly repaired. And the good news is that Brian's apartment was thoroughly cleaned and sanitized, and things calmed down in his life, and his life went back to normal. Now, he told a reporter friend of his story about his very, very bad day. And the reporter said, well, hey, that'll make a good story for the newspaper. So he wrote it up and he gave it to Brian and he said, I want you to look it over, make sure it's correct, I didn't miss anything, and let me know if you have any final comments. Brian looked at it and he said, it's perfect, and I do have one final comment. Prayer. Don't leave home without it. Now, I cannot say that if Brian had kept his treasured morning prayer time, that the pipes would not have burst and his tire would not have gone flat. I cannot say that if he had kept his treasured morning prayer time, that he wouldn't have slipped on that carpet, bumped his head, and his car wouldn't have gotten stolen. I cannot say these things. And I cannot say it because prayer does not change things. Ooh. Prayer changes consciousness. Very important distinction. Prayer does not change things out there. Prayer changes us in consciousness. And that changes everything. You see, when we pray, shift, yes, I said shift happens. When we pray, our consciousness is shifted into a higher gear. And that's why Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, tells us he defines prayer as the accelerating activity of mind. And so just as a jet engine accelerates and lifts that plane up to higher and higher altitudes, when we pray, our consciousness is lifted up above the level of the facts to the altitude of truth. Prayer is a waking up. Prayer is a remembering the truth. The truth that no matter what the problem may be in your life, love and peace are right there in the midst of it. Because you are right there in the midst of it. The truth that no matter what the challenges may be in your life, joy and wisdom are right there in the midst of it. Because you are right there in the midst of it. Love and peace and joy and wisdom are right there within you, waiting, ready and available to be accessed through prayer and to be expressed right there in the midst of the facts, the problems, the challenges of your life. So prayer doesn't change things. Prayer changes us in consciousness. And my friends, that changes everything. A couple of weeks ago, I received a call from a friend who was facing one of the most challenging situations in life. Her sister was dying of cancer, and she got the call to come and say her final goodbyes. And so she called me. And needless to say, she was distraught. And so at first, all we did was breathe together. We took many deep, long breaths together. And then we prayed. We prayed in order to lift her consciousness up above the level of the facts to the level of truth. The truth. That life is eternal. That we simply move from this side of life to the other side and we continue in a new expression of living. We prayed. We prayed in order to lift her consciousness up to the truth that God is the omnipresence of peace itself. And the only reason we don't feel that presence, that love, in the midst of all of the situations and circumstances of our lives is when we allow ourselves to remain stuck at the level of facts. So we pray. And we pray. And when we were done, she went to sit at her sister's bedside and to say her final goodbyes. And when she was done, she returned home and she called me. And she said, Kim, I felt nothing but deep, abiding peace as I sat at my sister's bedside and said my final goodbyes. I felt nothing but the love and the peace and the presence of God. So you see, my friends, prayer doesn't change things. Prayer changes us in consciousness, and that changes everything. So no wonder Eric Butterworth tells us that when we pray, our consciousness is lifted up to a new height of awareness and knowingness and feeling and oneness. And no wonder in the book of Psalms, David tells us what? He says that we must pray from the rising of the sun until the going down of the same. And in the book of James, we are told, are there any among you who are sad? Tell them to pray. Are there any among you who are joyous? Tell them to pray. No wonder Paul tells us to pray without ceasing, and no wonder all of the great saints and sages and spiritual teachers down through the ages all live lives anchored in continual prayer. You see, they move in what we now know. That prayer is important. It is needed. It is the key to the success of our day and our lives. And yet, talking about the importance of prayer and the importance of continual prayer is a lot like talking about drinking 8 glasses of water a day. Everybody knows it's a good idea, and everybody struggles to make it happen. So the question this morning is, how? How do we supersize our prayer life? How do we establish and maintain a life of continual prayer? Well, I invite you to consider 3 simple steps: commitment, practice, and acknowledge. So if you need a shortcut to remember that, it's CPA. Commitment, practice, and acknowledge. So as the kids say, let's break it down. Let's get into it. Let's unpack it. Did you know that there is a difference between an intention and a commitment? Don Coates of the International Institute for Self-Improvement tells us that an intention is doing what you said you were going to do until something better comes along, or until something comes along that blocks your way. Don Coates says that many of our New Year resolutions are actually intentions, good intentions. So we start out doing what we said we were going to do, or not doing what we said we were not going to do. But then something comes along where something seems to block our way, and our good intentions fall by the wayside. On the other hand, a commitment is doing what you said you were going to do, and when that something else comes along or something gets in your way, you just what? You roll up your sleeves. You dig in, and you keep on keeping on doing what you said you were going to do, no matter what. So here's the question I invite each and every one of you to ask yourselves this morning. Is my prayer life based on a good intention or a deep commitment? Because the first step in supersizing your prayer life is to make that shift from a good intention to a deep commitment. Now the second step is to practice our daily word practice. Now, when I say practice, I don't mean practice like you're practicing the piano. You play beautifully, by the way. Like you're practicing the piano, trying to get to Carnegie Hall or something. We all know that little saying. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. And that works for that, but that's not what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about doing what Eric Butterworth calls vain repetitions, repeating words and phrases, hoping to make something happen. Oh no. What I'm talking about is practicing like Brother Lawrence practiced. He practiced the presence of God. And I'm pretty sure we all know that Brother Lawrence was a 13th century monk who discovered for himself that even while scrubbing out the dirty, greasy, grimy pots and pans, I mean, let's think about it. Come on now. How dirty, greasy, and grimy do you suppose the pots and pans were in the 13th century? They didn't have the non-skid coverings and Teflon. I don't know if we use Teflon anymore, but all those little coatings and stuff. But yet he discovered that even while doing that job, that he could practice a little inward glance. That there was a part of him that could remain focused and aware and centered in the divine presence within him. He called it practicing the presence of God. And so the second step in supersizing your prayer life, in living a life of continual prayer, is for you to practice that inward glance. For you to be centered and fully aware of the divine presence within you that is you, no matter what is going on around you. Because when you're in that consciousness, you are in a consciousness of prayer. Now, our third and final step is to acknowledge. Proverbs 3:6 tells us In all your ways, acknowledge God. And so what that means is that in all that we do, acknowledge God, the good, the omnipotence of truth itself, love itself, joy itself, wisdom itself, and all that God is. And the way we acknowledge all this, the way we acknowledge omnipresence, is through gratitude and thank you. Gratitude and thank you. And since thank you is the highest prayer, when we dwell in a consciousness, a continual consciousness of gratitude, we are in continual prayer. Now, my favorite way to do this is simply to go through my day and occasionally pause. And then I ask myself, what do I see? And I really, really focus. And I acknowledge and I give thanks that all that I see is Spirit expressing in all of its many of its various ways. That's prayer. As I go through my day, I pause occasionally and I say to myself, what do I hear? And I listen just a little more deeply. And I realize that all that I hear is the sound, the voice of Spirit expressing in all of its many and various ways. So the way this works is that you continue to work with your senses in this way, each and every one of them, knowing and giving thanks. That thank you is the highest praise, is the highest prayer. And when you work with your senses in this way, you are living a life of continual prayer. So let's face it, prayer is important. It is needed. It is the key to the success, not only of your day, but the success of your life. And so each and every one of us must do all that we can to supersize our prayer lives and establish and maintain lives that are anchored in continual prayer. And it's easy to do. We simply follow the 3 easy but powerful steps I've outlined. Commit, practice, acknowledge. Commit, make that shift from good intentions about prayer to a deep commitment to pray. Continue. Practice, practice, practice. Acknowledge that thank you is the highest prayer, and do all you can. Do all you can to remain continually in a consciousness of gratitude. And finally, acknowledge. Acknowledge that thank you is the highest prayer, and do all that you can to remain in gratitude as you practice the presence of God, that inward glance. Oh, and one more thing. Remember the advice. Follow the advice of Brian Heiss of Provo, Utah, when he said, prayer. Don't be home without